You know you're going to have a breach. You don't know when it's going to happen and you don't know how bad it's going to be, but you've got to prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Karen Stevens delivers a sobering reality check that every business owner needs to hear. In an age where cyber attacks make headlines daily, she cuts through the wishful thinking with a fundamental truth about digital security. Her experience working with countless businesses has taught her that preparation isn't optional, it's essential.
So you can have all of the most wonderful security in the world, but if you've got accounts insisting on, downloading every app known to mankind and pressing on links, like a madwoman, then your security has to be 100% perfect 100% of the time, and that's just not going to happen.
This isn't fear-mongering. It's practical wisdom from someone who's seen the aftermath of inadequate preparation. When she talks about preparing for the worst while hoping for the best, she's speaking from years of helping businesses navigate the complex landscape of modern cyber threats.
You really do need to trust nobody and verify everything.
Her message is clear. The question isn't if you'll face a cyber incident, but when and whether you'll be ready for it.
We get the evidence from you. We don't trust what you say.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Dumb Ways to Get Hacked. Are you still using password 123 as your go-to? Maybe you almost even wired the money onto the charming prince from the email that you received. Hey, no judgments here on Dumb Ways to Get Hacked. Today we've got someone who can help us all be a little less hackable. She spent over 25 years navigating the wild world of finance and then made the leap to become a cyber savior for businesses, especially SMEs. Karen Stevens, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bora. Gosh, I hope I can do all of that.
You absolutely can do all of that, Karen. I have the pleasure of, and I should say, I still have the pleasure of working with you in many scenarios and with clients. And I can tell you, you are definitely someone who can do that. I guess before we start, Karen, your journey is quite fascinating. You spent 25 years in the financial service industry. It's a significant career in itself. So what was the catalyst, I guess that aha moment, if you like, that event that made you decide what you've called a leap into the world of cybersecurity and then co-found BCYBER?
I wish I could say it was one big bang, but I think it was like a bunch of little things. Now, this will shock nobody who knows me. I can talk to most people, or I do talk to most people. So, and that's sort of in financial services, one of the really big things is to establish relationships with people and understand what their needs are. And I was at a tier 2 bank and I was reporting to the board, but I was doing it on the financial services side. And I'd often get asked to stay a little bit longer so that when the tech guy came in, I could translate for the chairman. And I didn't quite understand why the chairman just couldn't say, hey, what do you mean with XYZ? And, I asked him and he goes, well, I feel more comfortable asking you because you just don't judge me. And I went, okay. And then I was talking to my co-founder one time, and I have known my co-founder Graham for a long time. He was the CFO when I joined as a single-celled graduate. So I've known him a very, very long time. And he was going, what do you think of cyber? And I went, I don't know. And he goes, it reminds me of superannuation 20 odd years ago, which is sort of when it was starting to get going. And that's where I started. And I said, but I don't really know much. He goes, you probably know more than you think. And that's how it started. We realized that people just don't understand cyber. It's a whole new world. They go, I'm going to outsource my technology to ABC. And that's great. Or I'm going to give it to an internal tech bloke. And that's also great. But they go, my job is done. And it's like, mate, so far from done. Trust nobody, verify everything. So, that's where sort of the journey started. We're trying to get our clients to understand. It's great when you go to someone and go, are you doing my backups? And they go, absolutely. And I go, love to be you, my friend. But there's another question. It is, can you prove it? Yes. Now prove it to me. And that's, I think, a part of our background in GRC and financial services. You always had to prove what you were saying.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what comes to my mind is another colleague I know in the industry, Matt Fabry, who says that it's become a wild, wild west type scene with cybersecurity where many people are more so becoming a licensed reseller and or a great marketing company And at the end of the day, I think it's still, if you can do what you're claiming to do, whether you're the best at it or you're just covering the technical parts of it, I think as long as you can prove it and do what you need to do. So when a professional business like BCYBER comes in, does their audit and says, yeah, the backups are happening. Yeah, this is happening. Maybe we recommend something like this, but otherwise you're doing what you need to do. And one would think that sounds simple and easy, but working with you and, being involved in other businesses who we've worked together to audit and work with, we've seen that's not the case.
Oh, look, 100%. I mean, as I said, as you said, my background and my business partner's background is financial services. So it's been through a lot. Okay. We've had royal commissions where compliance up to the wazoo. There are certain things that you must do. So an example is if you are a financial advice firm, there are certain requirements. If you tell a client you're going to conduct a review on an annual basis or a biannual basis or something, you must do that. And you must do certain things in writing within a certain period of time. It must be recorded and you must be able to provide evidence to the regulator or your AFSL if they ask. But in cyber or tech, you're quite right. I mean, a lot of them are just really resellers, and it's almost like a 1970s financial advice business. And I use the word financial advice very loosely in the 1970s. And just for the record, no, I didn't work in the 1970s. I know there's grey, but I did not. But, people will say, yes, I'm doing this. And then when we check, they're not. I mean, the saddest case, which a couple of years ago now, and it was a financial advice, a private wealth company who called me up and said, I think we've got a bit of a problem. They'd actually had the bit of a problem for about 3 months, which was a bit awkward because, we're good, but remediation after 3 months it's a tough gig. And he introduced himself as saying, hi, I saw you present at a conference. I was the guy in the blue suit. I said, hi. And I went, fabulous. I was the only girl at the conference and the only one not in a blue suit. So, but it turned out that he did have a ransomware. So, the sexy kind, if you will. And he gave us all of the accesses that we needed. And we were going back to the security software provider to get the logs. Now, for those of you who don't know what a log is, think of it like a footprint. When someone logs into your desktop or your network, they leave a little bit of a crumb behind. So we were looking for the footprints. When I called up the security software provider, they just sort of laughed at me and went, no, we don't have it. And I said, even when you terminate a client, you keep everything for 90 days. And they said, Karen, this person hasn't been a client for 18 months. So my first meeting with this bloke, other than over the phone, was sitting down with him and his external tech bloke. And it was like, hi, I'm Karen. So tech bloke, this is what we found. Could you give me a heads up? Have I been given the wrong software? And he literally got up and left the meeting and I haven't seen him since. And probably a good thing because I would be a very unhappy little puppy if I did see him. And the really sad thing is he was a friend of 20 odd years to this guy and he'd been taking his money and not delivering. Now you could argue that the advisor who was breached should have been saying, hey mate, can you prove that you are doing what you say you are doing? But he was a friend of 20 years. That's a disgrace. And I wish I could say that was my only example, but it's not. But that's the one that stays with me. And I tell you what, if I ever see that bloke, it won't be pretty.
So you were named the Inaugural Female Cyber Leader in 2023, which is a fantastic achievement. Well done, Karen. Simply sitting down at the table isn't enough anymore, is what you are always proactively pushing. So what's been the experience as a woman in tech and cybersecurity space? As you said, single woman, all these men around in a meeting. What actionable advice do you have for other women who are looking to make the impact or come into the industry and become genuinely more inclusive?
Look, I think it goes back to, as I said, talk to everyone. What I have found is that the cyber leaders that I've dealt with are so approachable. People, say, oh, it must be scary. I'm going, mate, I've been typically one of the few females, sometimes the only female, I'm back in my younger years, the youngest female, in pretty much every room I've been in. I was talking to my co-founder the other day and I said, in financial services, I had, I think, 5 corporates in all those years led by females. So 5 corporate clients. of any stature. Like there were some smaller businesses, but the bigger side. So I'm used to sort of that. And this might shock you, especially since I've said I'll talk to anyone. I'm actually a natural introvert. Okay. So the idea of going to a function like an OSEG or whatever, or ISACA or whatever it happens to be, some association function, where I am the only person I know, fills me with horror. Like I hate it with a passion. But when you're going into a new industry, you have to put your big girl britches on and go, right, I'm going to make one friend today. And you literally go in, get your name tag and find someone to talk to. And what I found, and I don't know whether this is because of lockdown or yeah, I don't know. But when I reached out to people and said, hey, would you mind spending, 20, 30 minutes with me? Just, I'm new to the industry, so on and so forth. I got meetings with like heads of really big international tech companies going, yeah, sure, no problems. What time's good for you? These were out of London, out of New York, LA, as well as obviously Sydney and some European countries. So you actually have to ask. And I think, I don't know whether it's a female thing, it could be just a newbie thing to an industry. So I'm not quite 100% sure there, but you actually just have to try. The worst thing that anyone will do, and this is from my JP Morgan days, big shout out to my old manager there, Vincent O'Brien, who's now retired in the Greek islands. If someone says no to you, they're not saying no to you as a person. They're saying no to the concept that you've asked about. So if you ask someone, would you mind spending a little bit of time with me? And so I wanted to pick your brain about ABC. And if they say no, that's fine. It's not you they've said no to. It's just the concept of the questions rather. And that's fine. You just move on to the next person. And you can't take it personally. And that's so easy to say and so hard to do. So I'm sorry, my two, go out to a couple of industry functions and make a friend and, approach people. They're both really, really hard, but they do work.
So BCYBER's mission predominantly features demystifying the technical for SMEs. So many small to medium business owners wear multiple hats, as you know, because we all do it. And you can find cybersecurity incredibly daunting if that's something that you're nothing about. I mean, getting people to understand IT in the first place is hard enough as it goes. How do you and your team at BCYBER approach breaking down these complex concepts? Like you have a Grace portal that you offer to make them accessible, actionable, and for businesses that don't have a dedicated IT security department.
Yeah. So I think one of the things is we tend to specialize, although we do occasionally go outside our boundaries, we tend to specialize in financial services. So there's very little that my business partner and I have not seen in financial services because we've worked in GRC, so governance, risk and compliance. Cyber is just another one of those things. It's just another risk. It's a bit like a financial risk. Okay. You treat it the same. So you know it's coming. You don't know how bad it is. You don't know when it's going to hit you, but you know it's going to hit you. And that's like cyber. You know you're going to have a breach. You don't know when it's going to happen and you don't know how bad it's going to be, but you've got to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Okay. So we understand that. So when we speak to financial services groups or any group really, we tend not to speak to just the tech people. We tend to speak more with the risk and compliance people because they're the people whose houses will go. Okay. Self-preservation is a very strong motivator. All right. We understand the language, not only of business, but of finance. So if we are dealing with an AFSL, so they're the people that provide the license to financial advice groups in order to have a business and provide the advice. They don't need to tell us that they're an AFSL, that they have these responsibilities. We know what they are. Okay. Ditto if you're a financial planning group authorized by an AFSL. We know what the requirements are. You don't need to tell me. So that's really important. So one of the best examples I can probably give about us using the same language is we do some work with some very large AFSLs who are listed, and we espouse the virtues of cyber insurance. We are not cyber insurers. We are not insurance brokers. We do not get kickbacks, handbacks, nothing like that. We are very open with our pricing and, we just want the best for our clients. And we'd said to them for a while, come on, you've got to get cyber insurance. They went on it, got the broker on it. Now, this is a broker of a very large group, possibly international. And 3 months after I'd had this conversation, they promised me they were doing it. I get a call. Hey, can you just have a look at something? And I went, maybe. Wait. And they went, it just doesn't feel right. And that in financial services, often you know something is wrong just by a gut feel if you've been doing it too long. And I said, I'm not a broker. He goes, yeah. I said, it's not financial advice. He goes, I understand that, but can you just have a quick squiz at the application? And I went, it's not financial planning advice. I just want to be very clear, very, very clear. And I opened it, got to the third question. Now, the first two relate to what is the name of your corporate? What is the address? The third question told me that they had the wrong application and had done for 3 months. So that indicated that their broker that they had a long-standing relationship with didn't actually understand what their business was. Awkward. So we speak their language. Another example, and this is a personal one, it's a bit embarrassing, but it's just between us. When I first arrived into cyber, I spent a lot of my time basically swatting. I was reading and going to functions and just trying to get my knowledge up to speed. And a little while in, I got this invite to an asset meeting, and I went, something I understand. Thank the Lord above. So when I heard asset, I thought, hey, it's going to be about, it could be about cash, fixed income, equities, something that you invest in. I got there. The assets they were talking about were more tech assets, laptops, software, stuff like that. And I'm sitting there going, oh man. So when we speak to our clients, we are very clear with what we mean. We don't just say asset and expect them to understand. We don't say ATO, because in financial services, ATO is the Australian Tax Office. In cyber, it's an account takeover. Both are bad. Well, obviously we love the tax office, but both are can cause issues for you, but different ways. Okay, so you have to be really clear when you're dealing with businesses about what you are saying, and just don't expect the client to understand, because otherwise you'll go off on this random tangent that no one will understand. And I think that's one of the strengths that we do bring. We actually understand the language of the business, and specifically financial services.
100%. You hit the nail on the head on a few points there. That's one of the big ones though, and the big challenges you've likely seen is, especially again, SMEs, they still perceive cybersecurity primarily as an IT department issue. I should know, I'm that guy most of the time. It's a Bora problem, deal with it, which obviously is a fundamental risk to any business, right? And some of the most effective ways, I guess, to work with many businesses is to change their or shift their mindset within the business to get the leadership and the entire team to understand that cyber resilience is crucial for the survival and their growth. And as you said, at the end of the day, especially with the most recent changes from the Australian government, the focus is on them. They're the ones who are going to lose their house. They can't play the ignorant card and say, I thought that's something Karen was doing. I thought that's something Bora was doing, or, Graham was doing. So how do you guys work with businesses that you dabble into? And I'm guessing this is the experience that's come from your previous life to change that mindset.
I think the big thing that we find, the biggest hurdle, is the disconnection between reality and what you think's happening. So you're quite right. It's a tech problem. No, it's an everyone problem. The likelihood of the tech bloke pressing on a bad link in an email, for example, is very low. But the likelihood of the, Karen from accounts doing it, much higher. So you can have all of the most wonderful security in the world, but if you've got Karen in accounts insisting on, downloading every app known to mankind and pressing on links, like a madwoman, then your security has to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. And that's just not going to happen. Okay. So, that's sort of one of the disconnects. Another disconnect is what they ask for versus what they get. So they might ask for an audit, and I'll sit down and I'll sit there going, what do you think an audit is? And they'll go, well, I want you to find the holes in our system and give us a program of work. You're going, okay, so you've described an assessment and that's fine. And they're like, what? And I said, think of a cyber audit like a financial audit. That's a financial audit, like a cyber audit, will review your framework of activities against something. maybe the tax regime, or maybe warning 3-letter acronym coming, the ASD, so the Australian Signals Directorate, Essential 8, an Australian-based government tech framework or cybersecurity framework. We get the evidence from you. We don't trust what you say. Most people won't go down that pathway because it's very time intensive and very expensive. Typically you would go down the proper audit pathway if you're doing a DD for a purchase or if you're getting yourself ready for sale. Okay, so most people want an assessment. They want to identify specific vulnerabilities or holes and then have processes targeted so that you can fix up the vulnerabilities or holes. I cannot count the number of times and we learnt this the hard way, we would go into a pitch and we've taken the client at face value. Karen, I want an audit. And I go, cool. So I go in, do all my thing. They're going, why are you saying it's this long and this much? And this other one is like, this long and, tiny bit. And I'm going, So we lost, when we first started, we actually lost a number of pitches because we thought they knew what they were saying. So now we educate those. Another disconnect is when we say, how many users do you have? And they go, oh, well, we've got 10 staff. And you go, okay, so what do you think a user is? And they'll go, and I went, so you think a user is a bottom on a seat? And they go, yes. And I went, okay, so you're telling me you don't have a help me at ABC or a finance at ABC or whatever it happens to be. They're going, oh yeah, we have all of those. I went, that's a user as well. And they're going, oh, and I said, so do you know how many of those you've got? No. I went, okay, that's where the assessment comes in. If you think you've got 10 users and I come back with a hypothetical amount of 453, I think it was, that means that there's a bit of cleanup required, but there's also ways that a bad person or a bad actor, criminal, call them what you will, can get in. Another disconnect is who they share information with. Okay. So businesses who shall remain nameless, because if they're watching this, you know who you are, they don't have sharing protocols. Some people still send stuff via email and go, with God, you've got more problems than I can probably help you with. They're not using portals. Some of them go, no, we're across this. We're actually using links. And you go, look at you go. Oh, can you tell me about the links? And they're going, well, what do you mean? I went, well, do the links have no technical terms coming whatsoever, you cannot forward this through to anyone else capability? And they're going, I don't know. All right, my next question. Do the links die? Do they have a sunset clause? Do they have an end date? And they're going, I don't know. I said, so basically you've told me you've given something to a client that can go to anyone for any amount of time until the world explodes. And they're like, well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad. And I went, because it's not great. Do you monitor where people are sending things through? Are they sending things to a home address, a personal address? And they're going, oh, they would never do that. And I'm going, really? So it counts. And this is the thing that we help monitor and work with them. Look, and even like the basics, and you would know this, Bora, a lot of the breaches that you deal with, and look, I fully acknowledge we prefer to deal with the pre-breach work. This is where our life is. We do post-breach only as a special favor to people that we like. Okay, this is where we stand. But a lot of breaches out there occur because of a third party. So it's not you that's the problem. It's the supplier or the service provider that is the problem. So a nice example would be if you were a member of the Optus breach, hypothetically, that is a third party to you, perhaps as an individual or perhaps as a business. Okay, so what due diligence or what investigation have you done before you signed on the dotted line? And I had this discussion with our clients. I mean, I don't care if you've had a long-standing relationship after, the previous example I gave you of that 20-year friendship exploding in front of me. I said, my remit is to look after my client. It's not to make a friend with your service provider. If our clients go, we chose them because I've known them for 20 years, I go, well, that's fabulous. Do you know what their security measures are like? And they'll go, like what? And you go, all right, so you can do a proper DD or give them just a list of questions, or you can go deeper. But some basics. Do they have cyber insurance? Do they have PI? I said, and a rule of thumb is if someone goes, oh, I'll get back to you, they don't. And then they try to get it in time. So, just getting some of the basics right. And I haven't even touched on techie stuff, which passwords is not techie, but that will save you from a multiple of sins. So, it's a lot of disconnections out there, unfortunately.
I agree. And one of the things, I guess, is by now, if someone's listening, they've definitely got that, shit, I better do something about this and move into this space now. And if someone's listening right now and they've gone, okay, I actually need to get serious about this. One of the big things that I love about the approach that BCYBER actually takes is, and you've mentioned this, I think, multiple times, even in other podcasts, is progress, not perfection. So let's give some practical advice to any business, SME specifically, as to what you think they should do now and like as a bare minimum or the non-negotiables, and work their way up from there.
Okay. So look, really, my personal view is you've got to make your unknowns known. Apologies, Mr. Rumsfeld. Okay. You don't know where you are at. So if you get an assessment, make sure that it looks at both the tech and the non-tech. Okay. Often the non-tech is almost more important than the tech in some instances. And just bear with me for a moment here. Basic hygiene. Do you have a decent password protocol? Of course I do. Can you prove it to me? Oh, well, no. You go, okay. Is it in writing? Well, no, because everyone knows. No, they don't know. Unless you tell them they have plausible deniability, everything must be in writing. Okay. Training, once again, not a tech thing, more of a qualitative thing. Do you do training? Oh yeah, I tell the staff stuff. Okay. I have, back before I moved into cyber, you would often get a cyber person coming to a conference, okay, or a professional development day. They call them PD days. The tech would spend, of the 45-minute presentation, they would spend 30 minutes embarrassing, the bloke in the yellow shirt in the front row by hacking into his phone. So then they would spend the remainder of it going, aren't we funny? Aren't we great? I'm so fab. All of those people, including myself, would walk out going, my phone can get hacked. My phone can get hacked. My phone can get hacked. But what about what I need to do to stop my phone getting hacked? So here are a couple of things. Once again, basic hygiene. Everyone thinks their phone updates everything automatically. Yeah, no. Okay, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it updates automatically and totally cafats your privacy policies or the things that you ticked that you want done or not done. The Apple, iOS 17 update a little while back, that totally mixed up, removed people's privacy settings, but not for everyone, just for some special people. Okay. Your apps, have you done an app audit on your phone? Have you gone in and said, I haven't used that app for like 4 months. Uninstall it. You can always reinstall it. And with those apps that you cannot live without, have you done a manual check that they're updated? Have you checked that your browser on your phone is up to date? And you're going, well, it's a phone. No, it's a computer. If you compared your current phone to the Apollo 11 computer system, your phone, and look, this data dates back to 2024, so it's a little old now, is 120 million times gruntier, once again, highly technical term, than the Apollo 11 computer system. Your phone is very important. So once again, nice and easy. And none of this is costing you money, costing you time, possibly the cost of a coffee or a hot chocolate or a tea. If you're going to do it while you do that, I don't recommend alcohol while you're doing it because that can turn very bad very quickly. Written, everything has to be in writing. No plausible deniability. You need written policies. How should your staff use email? How should they use the internet? How should they use anything to do with technology? So with email, one of my favorites, thou shalt not use your business email as an identifier for social media, such as not limited to LinkedIn. There's a great court case you can Google at the moment, although it's gone a bit dark, so I'm not quite sure what's happened there. And it's an espionage one. So little things, once again, these actions should already be in place. So it shouldn't take a lot, but you do need to put them in writing. Another thing you need in writing, a cyber incident response plan. the people that we deal with who have that piece of paper or have that little bunch of papers in their hand while I'm going, can you tell me this? And they go, no, but the agenda, but it says on page 3. And I went, okay, go to page 3. Otherwise, I'm sitting there going, I need you to close your eyes. I need you to go into the office, make yourself a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, whatever. Log in. Go into your CRM. Can you describe the screen? This is a true story. 20 minutes of my life this took. And it worked out that it was a very well-known financial advice CRM. But if you have it in writing, and I'm a big fan of substance over form. Traditionally, you would have a continuity plan, a contingency plan, an incident response plan. Lovely, lovely, lovely. You're an SME. Who's got time for all of that? Shove as much as you can in your incident response plan and just call it Appendix 3. List of all my software. Appendix 2. List of all my tech products that touch the internet. It's just for you. No one's going to judge you on it. You know, these are things that you can do, but if you don't know where to start, obviously we can help. But the assessment that you do will highlight all of these and say, this is what needs to be done. Okay. I guess sort of one of the saddest, well, it's not, well, no, it is sad. Perhaps frustrating is a better word. And I try to let it, water off a duck's back. My business partner is not as zen as I am when it comes to this. When you ask for help and you don't listen to the help, it makes it hard for people like us. Okay, so if you say, what do I do? And I go, written policies, understand that a policy for you as a business owner is different from a policy to the tech bloke. The tech bloke hears policy and thinks of configuration, so the setup of whatever it is they're looking at, Microsoft or whatever it happens to be. Okay, he's hearing or she's hearing different things. So you need to understand that you've got the same language. But all of these things, only if you start asking questions. And often if you don't know the questions to ask, it's worthwhile spending a bit of money to get someone to come in and go, these are the questions that you ask, because it's a sharing of knowledge. It's not a, hey, this is our little ring fence. It is a sharing of knowledge. So once you go through it, you go, oh, I can actually do this, this, and this. And I only need an independent evaluation once a 6 month or whatever it happens to be. Or no, I need it on a regular basis. And that's cool too. But sorry, that was a lot more than a few basics, but basic hygiene will get you out of a lot of trouble. Okay, good password hygiene. So 16 complex characters, uppercase, lowercase, wiggle waggles, don't reuse, don't share. If you have a breach, up it to 21 or 22 characters, that is. Everything in writing, both for the business, but also the tech guys, and get reporting. You've got tech people there, internal, external, get a monthly report. What did you say you would do? What did you do? And prove what you've done. Those are things that you can do without too much drama. And, looking at your mobile, literally do it while you're having a 5-minute break with your coffee. It's not going to cost you anything, but if you lose your phone, your life as you know it will change dramatically. So yes, I will get off my high horse now. Sorry, that was a big soapbox.
I think you gave incredible advice, and I have to say I've worked with BCYBER, or I should say continue to work with BCYBER regardless, and I know for a fact that they help many businesses do the right things, because as we spoke yesterday with a colleague, one of the key things which you literally hit on the head and we understand is that difference of when you go to do an audit and they say, oh yeah, our tech guy said this. Or you might say, actually, your tech guys have done a fantastic job and you don't need us to do this part for you because you've actually got the backups as proven. But the owner's sitting there thinking, really? We haven't seen that. It's the first time I'm hearing of this. So getting that information from your technical people is something that you're probably paying for if you're in a managed service environment.
Correct.
And even if you're not, you can ask for it. It doesn't matter for what's an extra $150 going to mean in the time of your life when you're audited, because as you and I know more than anyone else, a cost of being cyber breached is a lot more than you spending a few $1,000s preparing for it, because the reality is that it's not if I'm going to get hacked, it's when I'm going to get hacked. And when I do, how am I prepared for this? what have I got in place? We use password managers. So as you specified, make a password as ridiculously crazy as you want, but you don't even have to think about it. You just need to have one really ridiculous passphrase that you could remember, and then the password manager itself does and deals with everything for you, and it's synchronized on your devices. So in the event you do lose your phone, then you don't have to cry because I only had the authenticator app for my software. Now I can't even get in. My IT guys have to do this and do this. You've got everything documented as to what software we're using, the processes that I should be following on the monthly basis. I train my staff because cyber awareness training is the human factor that is one of the most important factors, because the reality is that I can lock this house up, or this building up, I can secure it all I want. But if someone comes pretending to be a police officer and I've unlocked that door, well, there goes all that technology. But absolutely, you still need the technology around you, protecting your emails from, the general spam phishing, which is one of the biggest compromises at the moment, monitoring with detection and response. So, instead of having that one security guard at the door who reacts to situations, you've got someone watching cameras and catching people going into places they shouldn't go into. And I think BCYBER does a wonderful job at not just auditing or helping businesses prepare, but I guess keeping their technology people in line to make sure that they're doing it. So it's in a business's best interest to have you come in and do this, because instead of getting defensive, I should be grateful that you've now actually said, what do you mean I've been paying $2,000, $4,000 a month and not getting what I've been paying for? And it doesn't matter who. I think they're all amazing advice, Karen, and I'm absolutely grateful that I've had or still have the privilege of working with businesses like BCYBER, because you keep us tech people in line, that is for sure. You also help us with our clients and vice versa. So I guess looking at the landscape that's constantly evolving in IT, we hear a lot about AI-powered fraud, more sophisticated ransomware. What do you see as the biggest emerging challenges for SME in the next few years, and what gives you hope or makes you optimistic about our collective ability to meet those challenges?
Oh, have I got any hope left? I'm not sure. I think people just have to acknowledge that, just AI, for example, it's here to stay. Okay. But you also have to understand, what's that quote? If you don't understand history, you're doomed to repeat it. You need to understand where, for example, ChatGPT came from. You need to understand who the founders were. One of the founders is particularly well known, also the founder of a car company. So you need to understand why it started. And it started as a competitor against Google. They felt Google was too prevalent, and they wanted to do something that was more humanistic. So they invented this thing that looks and feels a bit like a human. Okay, it doesn't want to disappoint. So if you ask it a question, it's going to make up stuff. What people need to understand also is that open AI means that it is open to everyone. Okay, so, and I won't prosecute this because we've all heard the cases, but you have to be careful with what you share. So the hope I'm getting at the moment is actually from school kids, which is very weird, but there you go. With the kids, what I am noticing is that the more cyber savvy are becoming very clear on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable to share, be it on chat, be it on Facebook if that's your thing, or Instagram, or I don't care, TikTok, whatever. Okay, I'm hearing now, no, you cannot use that photo and give it to anyone else. You cannot do this, so on and so forth. Just from a personal experience, we were just sort of upgrading some iPads and things not so long ago. And we were talking about passwords, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, this is going to be good. And the password that came up was Hooly Dolly Batman. I'm sitting there going, I've been so proud in all my life. So the people coming through the ranks now, I think, understand it. It's those of, my vintage that need to get the basics right. And we're still not getting the basics right. We are too trusting. And I know that sounds really horrible, but you really do need to trust nobody and verify everything. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to understand. Don't be scared, using AIs, and don't be scared of it. Use it to enhance what you're doing. It's your personal assistant. It's not your replacement. Do you need to upskill? Absolutely. But use it to make you better. There are things, as you said earlier, that you can't just rely on random videos to do. Training. Contemporaneous, relevant human training, be it virtual or face-to-face, will kick the butt of any video AI thing, because you can make changes on the fly and you can get people to understand it's not just cyber safety in the workforce, it's cyber safety in your world. And I think that's perhaps another thing that is starting to throw some green shoots. People are understanding you don't just do this stuff at work. You don't just have, picking on passwords. You don't just have a really good password at work. You have a really good password for everything. So yeah, a little bit of hope, but I will, I, no doubt about it, I will hear cyber as a tech issue, no doubt, in the next couple of days. Yeah, and I will go back in there and say, well, it is a tech issue, but it's also a you issue. It's an everyone issue. I think we just need to acknowledge that we're only as good as our weakest link. So if you have a client base made up of mums and dads, retirees, or whatever it happens to be, I personally believe it is incumbent on you to raise even some basic hygiene factors with them during your meetings. But that's just me.
I agree. As per my podcast that just got this week with cyber expert Michael Owerkirk, the reality is you can't blame something on someone for something you haven't trained. The words, like as you said, which he challenged quite often, is the weakest link. It's a mindset in a business. It's that you need to train your staff. Otherwise, how do you know? And it's a bonus to a business, because at the end of the day, that person can use everything that they've just learned, possibly more at home than they can within the business. So you're given an advantage to your out of the and the AI, the monthly training sessions that we see, they're the ones that work really well in between the one-on-one face-to company trainings, because you have them in your team meeting. Hey guys, have we watched this week's video on example? I didn't realize I was using a free Wi-Fi in the airport. I've always done that, and I'm like, I'm never doing that again. That conversation then happens, and people really like getting into it and understanding it, and trying to build that culture is something that I know you guys do, because we have done some cyber training together as well. You get very specific into that industry, and you put a lot of shock value in there, which is always a little bit funny, because yeah, I know they but Karen, look, I want to say thank you, not just for virtually the last hour that you've spent on the show, but for everything that you do you've come from an industry where you built for many years, and you jumped ship to a new industry. You have brought the wealth of information and knowledge that you've had from that industry, which is definitely, I agree, very helpful with regards to the auditing and understanding of what's going on for all these SMEs. You're benefiting the financial industry again, even as a cybersecurity expert. And this is why I know they love working with you guys, and they prefer to use you guys for that. And also personally, because you are definitely a funny person to be around, and we always have a great laugh. For anyone who wants to reach out to BCYBER, how can they do that?
Look, you could reach out to me on LinkedIn. You won't see the real me, you'll see an avatar, so you know it's correct. Or just dive onto our website, the proverbial www.bcyber.com.au. But we've got a raft of things in there in the, what is it, Look and Learn, or I think it is. So have a look at that. It's, to go to your earlier point, it doesn't need to cost sheep stations, but you do need to do something today. Not everything, but just one thing today that you hadn't done yesterday will make you a little bit more cyber safe.